Hi everyone, welcome to today's live IELTS class. My name is Adrian and I am broadcasting this live IELTS session to you from Budapest, Central Europe. Hi Jeffrey, good to see you well ahead of class time. All right everyone, so these materials as usual are coming from our websites, aehelp.com for academic IELTS, gieltshelp.com for general IELTS. If you're studying for academic IELTS, look for this website. It's again www.aehelp.com, where you got lots of these task 1, task 2 questions, 6 full practice exams, interactive course, and more than 100 hours of video lessons. If you're studying for general IELTS, look for this green background at gieltshelp.com. All right. Today is a members chat class, but it's valuable to watch the class, especially if you're an academic IELTS student. Today we're looking at task 1 process essay diagram, and we will go through a full example. You can download our app from your iTunes or Play Store. Look for our logo, search for Academic IELTS Help. You can also get our books from your Amazon bookstore. Search for AE Helps Academic IELTS or GE Helps General IELTS. If you have questions, send me an email, adrian@aehelp.com, and I will be happy to answer any inquiries you may have. Hi, Marwa. Good afternoon to you as well. All right, please observe our schedule for the next few days. Today we have this class. Tomorrow we are doing some video editing during the day. And then Happy New Year's to everybody because it is the last day of 2018 according to the Gregorian calendar. All right, and then on the 1st and 2nd, first 2 days of the year, no class, back on January 3rd with speaking part 3. Hi Preeti, good to see you as well. Okay, so here is our writing task 1 question. The diagram below shows the stages in the life of frogs. Describe the main features and make comparisons where relevant. And it was our member Begzod who requested this question. He actually sent, or she, I'm not sure, I think it's he, sent 3 choices, and I chose this one. It's nice, it's colorful, it's a good example. Hopefully that student will be with us later as well. And you need to describe the main features, make comparisons where relevant. Of course, that is usually the question, and you need to write at least 150 words. Hi Kesey, hi Parth. Good to see some more members hopping in on this class. Good for you. All right. Step number 1, let's paraphrase this question. So members, rewrite this question with a little bit more detail using the diagram and some synonyms, antonym negatives potentially, expressions, descriptive language. Here is the diagram. You can see some eggs there, tadpole, the developing frog, and then you have the tadpole frog, the adult frog. So go ahead, members, take that first step. This is, of course, the beginning of the first paragraph, which is the overview. The overview should be 2, maximum 3 sentences, no more, and really pay attention so that there are no mistakes or as few mistakes as possible. It is your introduction. First impressions are important, so keep it clean, keep it accurate. Hi, Begzod, there you are. I believe this was your question, if I'm not mistaken. So there you go, life cycle of frogs. Being a member of our channel has its perks. You can read about that on the channel. One of them is you get to request a class in the week. And the other is you get access to our 6 full practice exams and private video list as well. All right, I'm going to write the paraphrase also while you're doing the same. I'm sure some of you are thinking about that. So All right, let's see what you've put up there. This is what I put up there. This picture, so instead of diagram, I said picture. It's the same. Instead of shows, I used the word illustrates. So this picture illustrates the 6 distinct steps in the life cycle of frogs from eggs to an adult amphibian. Okay. So you can see here, there's eggs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'll make that correction there. So there's 7 distinct stages from the eggs to the adult frog. When you have a cyclical type of process essay where basically it goes around and around, you have to choose a start point. And with animals, the eggs as a start point is, of course, a good place to start. There is that expression, what came first, the chicken or the egg? I like to think eggs came before the chickens, but hey, we can argue on that one. For task 1, start with the eggs. It's a little bit better. Okay. Distinct means clear. Okay. So Jeffrey says the diagram illustrates 7 distinct, so you saw the word that I used there, stages of the life of a frog. Very good. Okay, so you're adding some more detail. Bagsod says this diagram depicts the 6 steps which illustrates the life cycle of a frog from egg to adult. Okay, you don't need to repeat the word frog, Bagsod. Try to stay away from repetition, especially within the same sentence, if it's the first sentence. Preeti, the picture shows the 7 different phases of the life cycle of frogs. Very good. So you're using the word phases instead of stages or steps. That will work. I'll take that. All right, good. Good job, students. Keep going. If you're a little bit behind with your writing, don't worry. I'll catch up with you, and you can catch up with me. Do we see anything else? So is there any other clear information that we get at first glance? So we should write one more sentence for the overview looking at this diagram, some other main feature. What is one more main feature that we can capture just by observing the picture or this diagram here? There's something else that we should be able to see. Okay, Jeffrey says well, there's the living environment. What do you mean by that? Can you expand on that a little bit? So he's saying, okay, well, there's the water element. Yep, absolutely. I agree. Notice that I used the word adult amphibian. If this is a new word for you, amphibian, amphibian means a creature that lives both in and out of water. Okay, it's amphibious. Okay, it's able to live in water and out of water. All right. We don't see much of the reproduction, Preeti, here. So this picture kind of stops with the adult frog. We don't see the reproductive stage of female, male adult frog and then eggs. So I wouldn't go into that too much. I think Jeffrey's on the right track by saying that, hey, look, there's water and there's land here. So that might be worth mentioning in the overview. So when looking at the diagram carefully, it becomes clear that frogs live both in and out of an aquatic environment. Okay, getting fancy with some vocabulary. So instead of the word water, I'm using the word aquatic environment. Aquatic being the word water in the form of an adjective here. So aquatic environment, okay? Marwa, that's right. The life cycle has two environments, not really stages there, Marwa. It's more environments or contexts. Living in water and on land. We don't live in the land unless we're an earthworm. Frogs, they sometimes like to dig themselves into the ground, but I think usually they're on top of the land. So in water and on land, unless you're an earthworm. If you're an earthworm or something that, like a mole, mole is that little creature that digs holes in the ground, then you live in the land or in the ground is the more clear way to say it, in the ground. So careful with that preposition, Marwa, but good, okay? Begzat, I think you're jumping ahead there with the breaking through of the front legs and the breathing. That will come later. So this is our overview. This picture illustrates the 7 distinct steps in the life cycle of frogs from eggs to an adult amphibian. When looking at the diagram carefully, it becomes clear that frogs live both in and out of an aquatic environment. Now, for all of our viewers, I know some of you can't comment if you're not members for this class. Usually you can, but for this class not. Don't be shy. If you see new words like amphibian or aquatic environment, write that down in your vocabulary book. That's for everybody. And learn them, okay? Learn the word aquatic, aqua. It's a good word coming from Latin meaning water. All right, now we want to do the analyses. This is the main part of your task 1. Remember, you have to write at least 150 words. So for this kind of diagram, it's not too difficult to figure out the steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, because you basically go with the cycle. So here you have this, again, this circular cycle. Just make sure you have a good start point. If you start here or start here, I think it's possible, but it's a little bit more difficult. Choose the easy path. You still have task 2 ahead of you, so don't make yourself write from a difficult position. I think here, as I mentioned, the easiest place to start is number 1 with the eggs, and then go to number 2, the embryo, then 3, the tadpole stage. We see that's got 3 points. Then go to 4, the front legs breaking through, pulmonary breathing, right? So the lungs. And then go to the tadpole frog, where the frog is now clearly out of the water, and then the adult frog, right? So those are obviously your 7 steps. I'm sure that all of you would clearly pick that up. I don't recommend starting here, but that would be my second choice. So if I don't start with the eggs, I would start with this one. The diagram doesn't show the adult frog laying eggs, but you can infer that. So you could, in a different approach, start with the adult frog and say, number 1, the adult frog lays eggs in water, okay? And then the eggs rest on the plants, right? So be very careful to observe what's actually happening. Notice that the eggs are stuck to these long blades of underwater plants, right? So that's where we want to start. So let's start there, members. Your first sentence coming from here. And this is definitely the type of essay where you can start with firstly, secondly, thirdly, and use these expressions because it is a process essay, okay? A lot of students used firstly, secondly in their task 2. I always tell students that's not a good idea because task 2 is not a process essay. This is a process essay. It's cyclical. It's followed in steps or stages. This is where firstly, secondly, thirdly are good. Okay. Marwa says, firstly, the fertilized eggs. Now, include your adjective clauses, Marwa. You have some really nice English skills. I've noticed that. So you want to expand always and develop your skills further. So use adjective clauses, Marwa. So firstly, the fertilized eggs, which are attached to underwater plants, hatch to form the embryo, okay? Then you're pushing for a band 8.59. Otherwise, some nice start there, okay? So let's put that in. All right, so firstly, or in the first stage, and it's arbitrary, so I can choose the first stage. In the first stage, the fertilized eggs, which are attached to underwater plants, hatch and form the embryo. Okay, good. Okay, so nice descriptive language. If the diagram shows you that the eggs are attached to these plants, state that, okay? What does the embryo then do? All right, so what's my second step? Begzod, the process starts with eggs attached to underwater plants. Not in water, underwater, but good try with the in and the dash to form that word. It's understandable, Begzod, a little bit awkward, but understandable. So again, the process starts with eggs that are attached to underwater plants. Good, Begzod. And then you need to say, next the eggs hatch and become, what are these embryos? What are they doing? Notice that there's a circle around it, so always pay attention to the way the diagram is drawn. Notice that there's a circle here in pink. It's probably because the embryo is probably very tiny, okay? So this is probably showing us a magnification here, or an enlargement of the embryo. And notice that the embryo has this very, very simple shape to it, okay? So let's describe that. So here we go. Next, the very tiny, simple shaped, free floating, if you want to get really fancy, embryo begins growing and feeding. Okay? So next, the very tiny, simple-shaped, free-floating embryo begins growing and feeding. Now, it's okay, students and members, if you can't use the terms that I'm using yet. You will be able to. Don't think that your English will not get there. It will. But just describing the idea that I'm giving you, okay? So you can say the embryo begins swimming and growing. There are different ways to say that, okay? All right, Jeffrey, coming back to that first step. Again, students, don't worry if you're 1 or 2 steps behind. Just keep writing, and I will come back to what you're writing. So Jeffrey says, firstly, the eggs are laid on underwater plants, and then they hatch into an embryo. Not were hatched, Jeffrey. They hatch. It is the active action of the embryo, so don't use the passive on that one, Jeffrey. The eggs hatch. The eggs are actually actively hatching. It's different than the chicken, okay? When you have a chicken and the hen sits on the eggs, then the eggs are hatched by the hen, the mother chicken. But in this case, the eggs are kind of hatched by themselves. So I think the active voice is a little bit better in that one, okay? All right, Marwa moving one step forward and says, then the embryo grows and transforms into a longer and longer shaped tadpole. Yeah, notice that there's kind of 3 points here showing the tadpole. And why is that? So anything that you see in the diagram, students, when you see that, there's a circle here with the pink, you see here that there's tadpole and it's done as kind of 3 points, each one being larger, you should always ask why. Why does the artist or why does the scientist decide to do this enlargement? Well, because they want to emphasize that there's a lot of growth here. So this is actually very, very tiny in the beginning. Here they want to emphasize that the tadpole stage might actually take a significant amount of time for that growth. So they're actually tadpoles for quite some time, and there's a lot of growing that happens in these 3 points. So at minimum, you want to say the tadpole gets larger and larger over time. Okay, good. Preeti, very good. Same thing. The embryo starts to develop and it turns into a longer and larger tadpole over time. Yeah, absolutely. Just again, add in that feeling of time. So here we go. In the 3rd phase, the embryo grows longer and longer over time and is referred to as a tadpole. Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Now, always make sure not to misspell words that are given in the diagram. Let's go to number 4, okay? Let's jump right into step number 4. Go ahead, students. Write your comment for step number 4. Here, the front legs break through. It's still a tadpole by the look of things. You can clearly see, I don't know if you can see that. Let me zoom in a bit more. There is something else that you can notice when you look at these pictures. Take a look at the embryo and then take a look at this tadpole. What else do you notice? What else has developed through these 3 stages? Let's see how many of you are really using your visual prowess and catching the details of the artist beyond the larger and larger tadpole and the legs breaking through. Aha! Jeffrey, first one out of the gates, he says, hey, look at the eyes. There's something going on there. Here, you just see a little black speck, little black dot. But here, it's like you can see a retina and a cornea. You can see a more distinct eye. So, which is true. There's development of the eye. And yes, very good, Yu-Yun. Good to see you in class. Yu-Yun says, hey, notice that there's a much more distinct tail here. So you have a longer, more powerful tail, probably for swimming. So obviously, Jeffrey says bigger and more adorable. I think that's subjective. But definitely we could argue that there's a more distinct tail and a more developed eye in those stages. Okay, so if you see those points in the diagram, don't be shy. If you feel that, hey, I have good English, I can talk about that, then write it down. All right, so let's get that sentence in there. So here we go. So then, as the tadpole matures further, it develops a more distinct tail, eye, and eventually legs form in the frontal part of its body. Okay. So there we go. Then, now, yes, you'll notice that I'm using some pretty fancy commas here to break apart the sentence in its appropriate sections. Always practice your comma use, especially in task 1. You will need to show usually a higher level of comma usage, maybe in task 2 as well, but definitely in task 1. So then, because I'm beginning with an expression, usually leading expressions are followed by a comma. As the tadpole matures further, again, it's a descriptive phrase, so I'm using a comma. It develops a more distinct tail, because I'm listing. And eventually, because here I'm again putting a time clause in, legs form in the frontal part of its body. Okay? Good to see you in class, Vanity Sean. All right. Vegan Jeffrey says, in the 4th stage, the tadpole starts growing their front limbs. Good. Nice use of vocabulary, Jeffrey, with limbs. And by observation, their eyes are more noticeable. Beautiful sentence, Jeffrey. Very nice. Nicely done. That's the kind of writing that gets you band 8s and 9s, Jeffrey. Perfect. All right. Vanity says, in the 4th phase, it is noticeable that the tadpole begins to develop the eyes, tails, and legs on the frontal part of its body. Vanity, it's very good. Just be careful because the tail is not on the frontal part of the body, so it's misinformation. It's not your English that's flawed there, it's your logic. So you need to say, in the 4th phase, it is noticeable that the tadpole begins to develop the eyes and legs in the frontal part of the body, and the tail in the caudal part of the body. Caudal is the rear in this case. So let me caudal. That's the scientific way to write the rear of the body, the caudal part of the body. Okay. All right. But otherwise, a nice sentence. Okay, students, so here we go. Some amazing leaps and bounds in the development of the frog here. You can see that now this tadpole is becoming a creature that looks a lot more like a frog. It's got front legs, back legs. It's still got this long tail. But above all, it's now starting its pulmonary breathing, which means it's able to breathe the oxygen on land, okay? So it's no longer using gills, but it's using lungs to breathe air. So let's describe this phase here, okay? Okay, here we go. You do the same. I'm going to describe. Write with me. Okay, I'm going to write a little bit quietly so I don't disturb you or distract you from what you're thinking. So let's describe this, this critical step or stage of the frog as it starts to breathe oxygen and air and climb out of the water. All right, so there's my sentence. Again, pushing you for band 9 and even higher levels for your university writing. Of course, in university, you will have to reach the levels of writing that I'm putting up here for you, especially in your later classes. But don't worry, you have lots and lots of time and a lot of great professors who will get you there. as long as you put in the work. All right, Preeti says, after that, the eyes develop on the anterior part of the body, and the small tail and leg grows in the posterior part. Posterior, very good. Anterior, posterior, those are some very nice words as well. Pretty scientific, high-level vocabulary. Good for you. All right. Jeffrey, unlike fish, frogs develop their breathing system in the next step, which enables them to breathe through their lung and skin. Okay, good. Just careful, Jeffrey, not to assume too much. The diagram does not tell you about the frog's ability to breathe through its skin, although that's true. So careful not to start intertwining too much information that's not observable from the diagram, okay? This is my sentence here. There's a significant metamorphosis that takes place in the next stage of the frog's life. Metamorphosis means a major change in the shape and the look. For example, butterflies come from caterpillars. Caterpillars look like worms. Butterflies, very different. There's a metamorphosis in the cocoon phase. So same thing here between the tadpole and the frog. There's this metamorphosis that takes place in the frog's life, whereby not only does the tadpole transform into a four-limbed frog, meaning it's got arms and legs, but it also begins its pulmonary breathing, being able to inhale air and live on land. Okay, so notice my use of correlative conjunction, not only, but also, all right? Getting that in there to really get that band score nice and high. Okay, so let's go back, or go down in this case, and take a further look. So now we've described this critical phase here, and boom, our froggy is now on land. Okay, here we are, frogs on land. All right, still some changes happening. What's the biggest change that's happening here on land? What do we notice? What do we observe? There's something very, very obvious, of course, here. It's something that humans probably lost along our evolutionary path as well when we compare ourselves to our other primate friends. I kind of miss it. Sometimes I wish I had that, climbing trees and things like that. What are we missing? And what is the frog losing in these last two stages? So Bagzod says after that, the tadpole becomes more mature, and it not only develops the eyes, but also forms legs with a stronger tail. In the next stage, there's significant change in both body and the organs of the tadpole. Bagzod, very good. Yeah, there's changes in the organs of the tadpole, which allow it to breathe air. So you can finish that, Bagzod, with an adjective clause. Jeffrey says the tail is shorter, like in Avatar. Yeah, absolutely. Have fun with it. Yeah, Begzod, you're right. The tail. Notice that the tail starts to disappear. Does anybody know what the word is? The best word choice here for the tail becoming shorter and shorter? There's a word in English for that. I bet some of our viewers would love to be able to join in on the chat right now and say, I know what that word is. Okay. There is one word for that. It starts with an R. And I'm going to write that up there. Let's see if some of you can think of it while I'm putting up the sentence. Okay. So in the next phase, or in the sixth phase, Let's see. It's not retreating. It's not shrinking. Good try, Jeffrey. It's not shrinking, Sunov. Shrinking is not bad. It's called receding, okay? Get the spelling of that here in a second, but it's receding. Okay, it recedes. There we go. So that if that's a new word for you, again, write that down, okay? Any new word. Retreating is a bit awkward. It's receding. So the tail recedes, okay? So this is my sentence here. In the sixth step of the frog's life, it further matures and grows, living on land, developing powerful hind legs while the long tail recedes. Okay, so as we know, the legs are used for hopping or jumping, so it's no surprise that those hind legs are developing to become bigger and more powerful, and you have this receding tail. Okay. In the final stage of the frog's life, number 7, in the final stage of the frog's life, the tail is no longer visible, and it is much larger than during the initial tadpole beginnings. Okay, so just a quick point there. Now, careful here. We're probably already at about 200 and some odd words, so you don't want to write too much. Okay, make sure you leave the 40 minutes for task 2. There's not too much going on, arguably, between these two steps here, other than becoming larger and the tail disappearing. So don't try to be too descriptive or too expressive here, especially if you're running out of time. This is where your good description, your detailed expressions should be happening. Here, you should just try to wrap this up and squeeze in a summary before you get to task 2, okay? Preeti says there are significant changes that happen in the next phase. Not only are the forelegs proliferated, and the tail is larger, but also the respiratory system starts to work. That's good too, Preeti. Okay, so you're back at this stage. It's great. Again, students, don't be shy. If you're a little bit behind, that's fine to get in that sentence. I'll go back with you and make sure you're on the right track. Okay, let's do a summary here. So your summary should be different than your overview. It should be something very clear that we can see from the diagram in this case. It should not be a repeat of your overview. I emphasize that again. And it should just be one simple sentence. If you don't have a summary, that's okay, as long as you have a solid overview and a solid analysis. But if you have time, so if you still have a couple of minutes and you feel confident in your English and you know you're a band 7, 8, 9 student, I recommend putting that summary, and it could help to bump your score just that little bit. Okay, so in this case, what can we write for the summary? So if we look at this picture carefully, what can we write for this summary? There's definitely something. There's a little bit of a something that we can state here looking at this picture. If we go back to the overview says, this picture illustrates the 7 distinct steps in the life cycle of frogs from eggs to an adult amphibian. When looking at the diagram carefully, it becomes clear that frogs live both in and out of an aquatic environment, of course, which is described by amphibian as well. So that's great. That's a good overview. We can state something for this summary. What can we state for the summary? What is something very interesting that we can observe clearly in summary by looking at this diagram. And the reason why you should practice summaries at home is because they also help to enhance your critical thinking. They help you to think in a more analytic fashion, so being even better at deciphering, dissecting information into what's going on, why is that happening, what am I seeing? Begzod says, little eggs become big frogs. Begzod, yeah, sure, that's, I agree with you, that's part of it. Marwa says, the steps in the water are much more than on land. So there's a lot more happening in water than on land. Yes, that could be a good summary. So you could say, Marwa, in summary, most of the frog's morphology takes place in water. Absolutely. I wouldn't say their lifespan is short, Jeffrey, because we don't know the span or how long their lifespan is. We're not given that information. We're not told if this is a week, a month, a year, 5 years. We're not given that information. One point that we can clearly observe in summary is that a frog's life cycle is very unique in that it goes through an amazing transformation from its birth into its final adult form. Okay, I was thinking a little bit more simple than you, Marwa, but that will work. So again, going at that morphology, right? That going from the egg to this adult frog, there's a really incredible change in the shape and form of the frog. Okay, so we can say that for the summary. So in summary, and just use in summary or to sum up. In summary, it is noticeable from this diagram that the life of a frog from eggs to adult goes through an incredible amount of physical change. Okay? So just something simple like that. So in summary, it is noticeable from this diagram that the life of a frog from eggs to adult goes through an incredible amount of physical change, or if you want to be a little bit higher level, physical morphology. Okay? There you go. Write that and you will get your band 9. Here we go. This picture, let's read it together nice and loud, students. You've done a fantastic job. All right, here we go. This picture illustrates the 7 distinct steps in the life cycle of frogs from eggs to an adult amphibian. When looking at the diagram carefully, it becomes clear that frogs live both in and out of an aquatic environment. In the first stage, the fertilized eggs, which are attached to underwater plants, hatch and form the embryo. Next, the very tiny, simple-shaped, free-floating embryo begins growing and feeding. And this is what you do at home when you're reading, you make some corrections. It's unique. In the third phase, the embryo grows longer and longer over time and is referred to as a tadpole. Then, as the tadpole matures further, it develops a more distinct tail, eye, and eventually legs form in the frontal, or as I think it was Preeti that said it, if we want to be even more scientific, anterior part of its body. There is a significant metamorphosis that takes place in the next stage of the frog's life, whereby not only does the tadpole transform into a 4-limbed frog, but it also begins its pulmonary breathing, being able to inhale air and live on land. In the 6th step of the frog's life, it further matures and grows, developing powerful hind legs while the long tail recedes. In the final stage of the frog's life, the tail is no longer visible and it is much larger than during the initial tadpole beginnings. In summary, it is noticeable from this diagram that the life of a frog from eggs to adult goes through an incredible amount of physical morphology. Again, write that. You will have a band 9. Preeti, Jeffrey, Bagzod, Marwa, Kisi, I'm not sure what happened to you. I hope you're still with us. And a couple other students that were in there at the beginning. You've done a fantastic job, okay? That was really, really good from all of you. Some really nice sentences, great effort, good words, good vocabulary and connections. So you're doing a fantastic job. Members, if you have time over the next day or two, choose another similar like diagram, send it to me. I'll send you some feedback and a score estimate, okay? Jeffrey says, in summary, a frog looks very different in its adult form than its early stages in life. That's very good as well, Jeffrey. Just a little bit more detail, okay? All right, students, fantastic. Again, no class tomorrow or for the next 3 days. Back on January 3rd with speaking part 3 practice, okay? And for all of our viewers, don't be shy. Check us out at aehelp.com for academic IELTS, gieltshelp.com for general IELTS. We are here to help you reach success on the IELTS exam. Spend a few dollars, get our premium courses, save yourself a lot of stress, headache, and another $300 to have to sit the IELTS exam again. So invest a little to save a lot. And we'll see you in the new year. Happy New Year to all of you. Yep, I just did jazz hands there. Happy New Year to all of you. I wish you, if you're celebrating and observing New Year's Eve festivities, I wish you a very happy, memorable, love-filled New Year's celebration. Stay safe. Put a little bit of money in your pocket for a taxi or a cab. If you have to walk home, walk. Don't drive. Don't drive with people who are drunk. Just be really careful. We want you to enjoy life to its fullest, and we'll see you in the new year. Bye for now, everyone. Much love to all of you.